All the Mods 9, one of the most popular Minecraft mod packs of all time, consisting of many of the more popular mods out there, from biome overhauls to structure mods, tech mods, and a lot more. But what if there is just nothing? In this video I spend 100 days in All the Mods 9 to the sky. As this is a Skyblock and a tech mod, it will be mostly about the tech mod progression, so it'll be a bit slower than if it was an adventure style mod pack. Additionally, this is my first 100 days video, so any feedback on pacing, editing, or whatnot is appreciated. Or if you have any suggestions on automation in this pack, I'd love to see them too, as I'm still relatively unfamiliar with some aspects of this pack. But watch the video fully first before you suggest, as I do change some methods of automation and power a few times throughout. I have yet to start recording the next 100 days, so comments are appreciated. Also, this isn't hardcore because I suck. In this episode, the first of however long it takes to complete the pack, I have several goals. First is to set up a good storage system. Secondly, automate resources using various mods. Thirdly, kill the bosses, End Dragon and Wither. Fourth, get full netherite armor. And finally, my goal is to get all the modium. We'll see if I accomplish these goals in All the Mods 9 to the sky. Without further ado, I am Bedrock Burger, your local puff puss sim kinda guy. It's time to begin this adventure in tech and magic. Let's begin with day 1. When spawning in, I was greeted with a sign telling me to input a certain command to generate an island for the start of my journey. There were a few options, from literally just a tree to a floating box, but I went with the safer option with the cozy cottage because I'm not a masochist. When I loaded in, I was given a set of starter gear, a quest completion for just existing, and existential dread knowing that the void was only a few blocks beneath my feet. There was an option for a head start, but I'm a masochist, so I didn't choose to take it. This island gave me a good amount of starter stuff. Animals, crops, a single tree, and even a starbuncle. It's adorable. So I got right to work, chopping the tree down for wood, planted the sapling down again, making a crafting table, and quirking to grow it faster. The Skyblock pack has a mod that allows rapid crouching to act as bone meal in an area, growing plants and saplings. Also, amethyst clusters. I could also crouch and hold right click on the ground to dig up pebbles of varying stone types, from cobble to diorite to blackstone. I don't have a macro for clicking, so I had to do it the normal way. I made some cobblestone from the pebbles, then made a hammer, one of the most essential parts of the early game grind for this pack. It allowed me to crush the stone variants into gravel, then gravel to sand, then sand to dust. Other stone types like blackstone and endstone turn into crushed versions of themselves. Crushing is important for sieving, which I'll get to when I make a sieve. I continued to get more wood and use it to make a crook, which when it broke leaves it had an increased chance of making saplings or even a silkworm. For the rest of the day, I used silkworms to convert leaves into infested leaves. When broken with a crook, the leaves dropped string. A lot of string, actually. I did this throughout the night to get enough string to where I never run out for the rest of the 100 days. No joke, I actually never run out. When day 2 started, I got into sieving, making 9 sieves and 9 string meshes, one for each sieve. So here's how sieving works. Explanation time with Burger. There's a few blocks that you can place within a sieve. Holding right click pushes it down. When it finishes, it spits out materials based on the level of mesh that it is. You could sieve up to a 5x5 square and 25 blocks at a time, but 9 is plenty enough. Sieving gravel, which is obtained by crushing cobblestone with the hammer, spat out ore chunks and flint. 4 ore chunks of a specific ore could be made into 1 physical ore block. I sieved all day, getting enough flint to make flint messers, the first upgrade to the meshes. In day 3, I continued the sieving, slapping dust in those things to get redstone as well as a bunch of materials from both the Zycraft mod and Certus quartz from Applied Energistics as well. To get moving, I made an oak barrel to eventually get water. It built up water as it rained, but I only got enough to fill it once. I made some clay by right-clicking dust into a barrel with water. It was at this moment where I made a goof in doing that. Instead of making an infinite water source, I used the water to make clay. I'm not the smartest burger, okay? With the clay, I combined it with bone meal, which I got from sieving, to make porcelain clay. I used it to make a porcelain crucible, then smelted it to make a fire porcelain crucible. It could passively generate lava if I fed it cobblestone and had it sit over any heat source. I set that up, as the cottage comes with campfires, but it was pretty slow for now. It's not until a couple days later where I get something really fast. Next, with day 4 starting, I grabbed some pebbles and used them to make 9 hammers, enough to make a compressed hammer. This one was able to break compressed blocks, which were made from 9 of a normal block. Turns 1 compressed cobblestone into 9 gravel. It really just saves time, honestly. Throughout the day, it was Save City. I was working towards starting my first automation with the cobble generator, so I made an oak crucible which I could toss leafy stuff in to make water. I got said leafy stuff by sieving dirt. I could duplicate dirt by using gravel and dirt to make coarse dirt, and then hoe the coarse dirt into farmland, then picking up the farmland to get regular dirt. On day 5, my oak crucible had made enough water for me to use 3 iron from sieving to make a bucket and collect the water. I grabbed some lava from the fired porcelain crucible to make a cobblestone generator tier 1. It just made cobblestone. It was amazing. One of the best things ever. I put a drawer on top of it and it was able to put the cobble directly into the drawer, but it filled up real quick. I upgraded the cobble generator to tier 2 just in time for day 6, where I killed a wandering trader, then made a compacting drawer using some pistons. It compacted some of the cobblestone it generated into 1 times compressed cobblestone, making it easier for me to smash into gravel with the compressed hammer. I sieved a bunch of gravel to get copper, which I used to make a copper ore hammer, which when combined with the raw ore made it into 2 dust, which then could be smelted into ingots, so it essentially doubled the output of ores. With day 7, I killed a wandering trader, then upgraded to a tier 3 cobble gen, which was really all I needed for the rest of the run, not gonna lie. From sieving a bunch, I was able to upgrade to iron meshes, increasing chances of certain materials from sieving, like now gravel in the sieve could make diamonds. I used the diamonds to make a diamond pick, and some more iron to make an iron furnace, which was faster than a normal furnace and could now accept different upgrades from the iron furnaces mod. These are so clutch. I would highly recommend getting an iron furnace as soon as possible, and then getting a factory upgrade for them, which I do soon. As the day wore down, I looked into Applied Energistics 2, the mod I would use for storage, as I used the other best storage mod in this pack, Refined Storage, in my other series on All the Mods 9. Go check out those videos. In this series, it is my goal to try out mods that I haven't used all that much, or ones that I'm more afraid to try out, like Applied Energistics 2 and Mechanism. On day 8, I completed a huge milestone, making the Igneous Extruder. It was the second automation I had access to at this point. You put 2 liquids on either side of it, and a specific block underneath of the extruder to have it generate new blocks. I was aiming to make Kivy from Zycraft, assuming I'd go into that mod. But, spoiler alert, I actually don't in this 100 days. Since I had an easy source of lava from the crucible, I used a bucket to make obsidian. Come on, I have to do the bit at least once. Placing the obsidian underneath the extruder, then the extruder on top, with water and lava on each side of it, was an easy way to make Kivy that I would never use. The next day, on day 9, I made an alternate version of the Igneous Extruder, the Extruder. It acted similar to its heated counterpart, requiring certain block placements to generate a new block. I sieved a lot of dust to get materials, then set up the extruder to generate moss, which required placing an extruder on stone, then surrounding the stone with bone blocks. It pushed the item that it was generating into any inventory that was on the end of the extruder, so I just used a chest. Knocking out more quests on day 10, I made slime in a bucket by mixing water in a barrel with milk. Unironically, this single slime block would come in a lot of use later on. I never needed to make another slime block again. I then needed to make witch water. No, that water, which was like water, but stinky. I needed mycelium though, which required me to start into the Ars Nouveau mod, a very nice magic mod. I crafted the novice spellbook out of 1 of each iron tool to kickstart the quests. Weirdly enough, I have still not needed to use the spellbook at all. For this 100 days at least. I crafted the imbuement chamber using golden stuff. This chamber allowed me to make a lot of materials for rituals in Ars Nouveau, which was one of the things I need to expand this tiny island. But right now, my goal was mycelium. I slept into day 11, the first sleep of this whole 100 days, and got started. I used lapis that I got from sieving in the imbuement chamber to create source gems, a major component to this mod. I used some of that to make source stone, and then a source jar, which held source, the equivalent of physical mana in this mod. Take a shot every time I say source. I made pedestals to surround the imbuement chamber with so I could use them to create materials for various things, then looked into source generation. There were quite a few ways to do so, but the two I started with was an agronomic source link, which made source whenever plants grew nearby, and the volcanic source link, which ate flammable materials to generate source. But what was source used for? Ritual fuel. Normally, making stuff in the imbuement chamber is slow, but nearby source speeds it up. It is also required for some rituals to even be constructed in the first place. Additionally, rituals using the ritual brazier, which I'd make soon, ate up source from the jars. The bigger the ritual, the more source it would need to eat up. No idea how to automate it right now, there's probably some way to do so, I just don't know right now. With the source in the jar and a few other materials, I made 2 manipulation essences. One to turn the moss into grass blocks, and the next one to turn said grass blocks into mycelium. But on day 12, I placed the mycelium underneath one of my barrels, converting the water inside to witch water. I mixed it with lava to make my very first netherrack. I then made more with the igneous extruder, putting lava and witch water besides the IE and netherrack underneath. Yes, I am aware of the other recipe to make netherrack, I just didn't know it at this time. I crushed it with the hammer and then sieved for whatever materials I could get, like blaze powder. I then made an RF Tools coal generator to complete the chapter. Would I ever use it? Nope, I had other power goals. I made gold meshes from the sieves, which, like the flint ones, would increase chances to spit out certain materials. I sieved some crushed blackstone now that I had gold meshes, and ancient debris popped out. Unfortunately, I wouldn't get the smithing template for netherite for quite some time. I used more pebbles to make andesite, and then andesite alloy for a small goal, soul sand. The hard way to make it at this early game was to use witch water, but that was very time consuming, so the next best option I had with my current very primitive tech was create mod haunting. So I set to it, making aluminum plates as the recipe was different here, andesite casings, an encased fan, and a hand crake. I used my only soul sand to make the soul campfire, and in day 13 I made a stack of soul sand. I sieved it all, getting prosperity shards, bones, and glowstone among a few other materials. No soulium yet. Bummer. Anyways, I set my eyes on a ritual that I assumed I could do right now, so I made the ritual brazier from Ars Nouveau. The ritual I wanted to make was the ritual of Conjure Island Village. The only issue, I had blaze powder, but no rods, and no current way to make the rods. Double bummer. There was a way to make the rods, I just need some setup. But I was not deterred by this, so instead I made a ritual to conjure a geode for some reason. Maybe at the time I thought it would summon an ore geode? Present me doesn't understand past me sometimes. With the ritual brazier and a source jar, I started the ritual, conjuring an amethyst geode that was just floating over the void. I could sieve for amethyst, I'm not sure why I conjured this island, even as I'm voicing over the script, no idea why I made it. Anyways, into day 14, where I had a goal. Basic storage. I currently had no efficient or good power generation, so right now going into AE2 was off the table. Instead, I looked into RF Tools storage. It had a few options, so I started with the one that required ender pearls. I made endstone by mixing lava and glowstone in a barrel. Need a stone barrel though to hold lava, so I did make one. I sieved a few crushed endstone I made to try for a chorus plant, getting one with only a few sieved. On JEI, there's a recipe for the extruder. You place a chorus plant, endstone above it, and then the extruder on top, and it just didn't work. Recipe on screen now so you can see my confusion. It just wasn't working oddly. Not much of a roadblock though, as there's another recipe to automate endstone requiring the same recipe, but you replace the chorus plant with the purple block. Those could be made the vanilla way, with popped chorus fruit. It did work, actually, so in day 15 I sieved a bunch of crushed endstone. Take a shot every time I say sieve in the early game. It's a lot. To continue my goal of storage, I made the RF Tools storage scanners. Saw that it actually wasn't what I was looking for in early game storage, so I made the modular storage instead, also from RF Tools. It didn't require power, which was nice, and was scalable. A tier 1 storage card, for instance, could hold 100 stacks of items. I went up to a tier 3 one after sieving for a bunch of gravel, which could hold up to 300 stacks. Couldn't go up to a tier 4 one because it required a lot more materials, and I didn't have the capability of getting 7 materials. This one was plenty enough to hold what I had been building up since the start of this run, but now it was time to get this ball rolling and start the techno train. I started on day 16 with Mechanism, making the Metallurgic Infuser, which could infuse different materials with others like diamonds or redstone to convert them into a new material. I made the heat generator from Mechanism as well, but it was kinda doo-doo. I used the infuser, some iron ingots, and a little bit of redstone to make infused alloy, and combined it with some basic circuits, which was osmium ore and infuser, to make the first and best early game power, the wind generator. It generated up to 80 FE per tick. RF per tick and FE per tick are interchangeable when talking about power generation, but for simplicity's sake I will say FE or FE per tick, just so we have a little bit of a consistency within this entire playthrough. On day 17, with my new power setup, I worked on cables, making steel dust out of iron dust and coal. Iron dust is made from hammering iron. Smelting the steel dust gave steel ingots, which I used to make basic universal cables from Mechanism. By the way, I absolutely hate the early game steel recipe, please kill me. These cables were able to transfer power through them, up to 3200 FE per tick, which was quite a lot for such an early game cable, but I took advantage of my new cables to make factory upgrades to my furnaces, allowing them to use no fuel, but use power instead to smelt items, as well as adding more slots to smelt these things. With iron furnaces, I had 2 slots to smelt stuff, so it was pretty darn efficient. On day 18, I decided to make storage for my power generation so it didn't get wasted too much, so I made a basic energy cube from Mechanism, which could store up to 1.6 million FE, which was pretty darn good. A second wind generator has hit the power setup. I then made a superheating element for my lava production, which put my generation to 60 times speed versus the campfire's 2 times speed. It was almost instant at this point. But with the power setup started, I decided to do some housework, taking all the way until day 26 to work on a basic home. I take my time with building. This home I would call the Benolith, or the Ben Monolith, because my name is Ben, so Ben Monolith. But really the only notable thing during these 8 days is that I made a backpack and a balloon on a stick, which was sort of Diet Creative Flight. But now, let's roll a building montage. I slept into day 26, where I made more iron furnaces to add to my array of smelting. I moved my cobble generator, then made some item pipes from the pipes mod. My favorite mod like this, honestly. And day 27, one of the least impactful days in the entire run, just like day 26. I just saved materials the whole day. Kinda boring, not much to see here. I was doing this in preparation to scale up everything and start on some other mods to help set up the rest of this run. I did the same in day 28, but the one and only note on my sheet about day 28 is that I made diamond meshes. I didn't make them all diamond, as there were some materials that wouldn't output from diamond meshes that output from gold meshes. Weird, but it's fine. I do plan on massively scaling up my sieving in the next 100 days video, you'll see. On day 29, it was time to get into Applied Energistics 2, one of 2 prime storage mods in this pack. It could do a lot more than just storage, but my current goal was just a massive unified storage system that could scale into endgame. So, to start, I crafted the charger to start it off, which could charge uncharged Certus Quartz or do some other things I wouldn't need right now. I also made the Inscriber, which was foundational to pretty much every crafting recipe in Applied Energistics 2. It used inscription presses to make circuit bases, then was able to combine said bases into the finished circuits. With Skystone Dust, which I sieved from dust, I made each press: engineering, silicon, logic, and calculation. These were associated with diamonds, silicon, made from smelting Certus Quartz dust, gold, and Certus Quartz respectively. In day 30, I made quartz engraved glass, made from Certus dust and glass. It was used for a majority of things in AE2, like the ME terminal into the ME crafting terminal, which acted as the access point for looking into my storage. But with the crafting table, think of the terminal like whenever you click to open a chest of sorts, but the chest has a crafting table inside of it, and it can go infinite. I can have as much storage as I want to scale up. I still couldn't use it right now, as there was still some more setup to do, like making Fluix crystals by yeeting regular quartz, which was obtained by sieving crushed netherrack, redstone, and charged Certus Quartz crystals into water. It made 2 Fluix crystals for one of each of those materials, so it was kind of annoying until I actually made the Fluix seeds later, you'll see. I made Fluix cables, which acted like wires that could also move items. I then made my first ME controller, the heart of a whole ME system. I could have made the maximum right then and there, as multiple ME controllers could be connected together to increase the amount of channels your system could have, or something like that, but my power generation was too low. But what's a channel? Honestly, I have no idea. My friend who is a genius at AE2 said not to worry about it, so I don't. Right now though, I have no actual storage on the system, so I made the ME disk drive, which could have disk drives inserted into it. The drives themselves were the main method of storage in this mod, scalable up to being able to hold millions of items on one drive. I stayed humble though, and eyed the 16K byte storage to start. Storage in AE2 is weird. When I say 16K byte storage, it doesn't mean 16K items. AE2 uses bytes for storage, so sometimes something like a 16K storage can hold quite a lot more than 16K. From the guide, it seems that 8 items is around 1 byte, and a 16K cell can hold 130,000 of a single item. No idea why they do that. Developer, please explain. But most of day 31 was dedicated entirely to chasing the 16K storage cell, which goes into the 16K disk drive. At the end of the day, I made by far the most impactful block in this entire run. Nothing actually comes close to how impactful this block was. The Flux Sieves. It was a sieve that used FE power instead of me power to sieve items, outputting it into a container below. I could just input a ton of things that could be sieved, and it just automatically did it. Now, I didn't make the other half to it, but that comes later, but this was huge. I could put up to 9 stacks of items in only one mesh to automatically sieve all of it. The best part was that there were upgrades available to it that allows it to do more than one item at a time, like the gold upgrade that I made in day 32, which allowed it to sieve 2 items at once. Each upgrade stacked to 3 items. So I made 3 golds, but turned them into a diamond sieve upgrade. The issue, however, was that my power generation was currently too low for it, so I added a 3rd wind generator to my setup to hopefully make up for it, but that wasn't enough. I would need to hold on to the diamond upgrade for a while. I also then made the 16K ME item cell, which was a mistake, actually. You see, in this pack, there's 2 of each disc cell, so there's actually 2 16K ME discs. One from the base mod, which can hold an absurd number of items, way more than 16K, but only 63 of those individual items. So it could hold something like 130,000 cobblestone, or up to 63 different items that went up to the 16K byte limit. There was another disc, which didn't have the 63 limit, which I would make later. But for day 33, see, I'm looking at my notes as I was typing this. before voicing it over, and usually for days, like days that I was building, like days 20 through 25 about, I have stuff written that's like building house or whatnot, but there's just nothing here on day 33. So I just assumed I was working on sieving stuff? I don't know. So day 34 arrived, now officially over a third of the way into this challenge. A wandering trader showed up, and before it tripped and fell onto my sword, it sold a freaking beacon. Of course, I bought it up immediately. After the trader mysteriously vanished, I made an extruder setup for netherrack, which used 2 lava source blocks and gravel to make netherrack. One of my friends then told me of the 16k disk drive, shout out to that friend, which was like the item cell, but there's no limit on the amount of items that could go in. So it acted almost like a 16k storage from refined storage. You can have as many different unique items as you want, as long as it stays under that 16k byte limit. It did eat up 2 netherite ingots though, but that's okay because sieving blackstone gave ancient debris, so I actually had plenty of it because sieving blackstone actually refunds some blackstone. It's pretty nice. On day 35, I moved everything I had made into my fledgling ME system. It was still an early setup, so it's nothing impressive just yet, and it actually starts to become a mess as the days go on. I then spent the rest of the day and night working on building, adding a new floor to the Benelith, then sleeping into day 36, which was another of the less impactful days. Of note, I made the crusher from Mechanism, which kinda did the hammer crushing for me, but slowly, and it couldn't do dust in this version of All the Mods to the Sky. I also wasn't able to add many speed upgrades to it as it sapped my power too much after I input 2. But it really put into perspective that I definitely needed to upgrade my power output. So on day 37, I added the Magmator from Power to this setup, which didn't do much, but it was honest work. I used my lava setup and a fluid pipe from Pipes to pipe the lava into the Magmator. It generated, I think like, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I think a starter one generated 20 FE per tick. So I was generating about math. I can't do math. Someone do the math for me. 3 wind generators and a Magmator. I can't do math. On day 38, I finally made the other half of the Flux Sieve puzzle, the Flux Hammer, which acted like the hammer, so I could slap a cobblestone generator on top, have it go into the hammer, then it goes into the sieve for automated resource generation, which was absolutely huge, and one of the main goals for this run was automating resources, so I could check that off. To keep up with the output of resources, I made a diamond barrel from sophisticated storage and put a diamond stack upgrade it, which multiplied the number of stacks in a single slot could hold by 16. And the wording is actually important on there, because 2 of these diamond stack upgrades means that 1 slot can hold something crazy like 17,000 items or something. It's a lot. On day 39, I started the process of getting the darn place route I needed. It was pretty annoying to actually work towards, as the press from Immersive Engineering was very steel intensive, and as I mentioned earlier, I really don't like the steel recipe. Even though I did have automated resources, it was slow at this moment, so I had to still wait on iron. My power production wasn't high enough for double diamond upgrades, so I had to wait. It was worth it though, as the blaze rod was needed for a tablet of Conjure Island Village. So throughout days 39 and into day 40, I worked on making the Immersive Engineering press, finally finishing it on day 40, doinking it with the engineer's hammer to assemble it. But there was one thing missing though, the actual bar mold for the press. Because how the press works is you can throw items onto the conveyor belt, and depending on what mold you have there, it presses it down and makes it into the items according to the mold. And I needed the bar mold. So on day 41, I started to work on that, making a coke oven for the sole purpose of needing the creosote oil within to make treated wood. If you have played GregTech, you are getting PTSD right now. My priorities are all over the place in this 100 days. Just wait until you see my motivation and only reason to kill the Ender Dragon. It's a weird reason. I made the engineer's workbench using the treated wood, and then the engineer's blueprint, which allowed me to actually create the metal press mold for rods. So finally I tossed some blaze powder onto the press, and it made a blaze rod. I had already made a bunch of blaze powder from the netherrack sieving, and it took 5 powder per rod. It was very much worth it as I was able to create the Tablet of Conjure Island Village. So I slept into day 42 so I'd have daylight to see the ritual take place, then started it using the ritual brazier and a source jar. So finally, villagers! Yay. I went right into crouch and right clicking to pick them up, then made the easy villagers iron farm. It just passively produced iron as it sat there. So I never had iron troubles ever again. I hooked up a hopper and drawer to it, then made the breeder, sticking the other 2 villagers on the island into it. I gave them bread so they could be horny, then made an incubator, which made the villagers grow inside of it. I hooked all of them up to hoppers, then in day 43 I tested how big a conjured plains would be, using earth essence to make the tablet. I killed a wandering trader, then in day 44 I conjured the plains. It was disappointingly small. It was so small. I absolutely forgot to light it though, so in night of day 44, a ton of mobs spawn. So, to burn them all away, I slept into day 45 to get them burning, then routed some Fluix cables up to my 2nd floor, and I then obtained my final needed Inferium to make an Inferium seed. This Inferium had a chance to drop from any mob killed. So if you were wondering where mystical agriculture was in this first 45 days, I just hadn't gotten the luck of getting Inferium needed to make the seed. Most of it was from killing the wandering traders, actually. But I didn't start mystical agriculture right away, instead adding another ME crafting terminal to my 2nd floor. With the cables, it connected right to the heart of my ME system. I also planned out a setup for the power mod, which I had been trying to avoid since I did it in my other ATM9 series, but it was unavoidable. The early game for the power mod is just simply too good, especially the thermogenerators. So in day 46, I made a sink, which was an infinite water generator, as thermogenerators needed water input on a side to work. I then skipped from the starter thermogenerators to the basic ones, and with lava underneath them, it made an equal amount of FE per tick to the wind generators with 80, so making just 3 of these thermogenerators, which were actually super easy to make, was equivalent to 3 of the wind generators. I made a basic energy cell as well to store what the generators made before wiring it to the mechanism energy cube. Why? No idea, seemed useful at the moment. I also made the energizing orb, which was actually the method in which all the modium was created. It used energizing rods to transform items within it, using Fe per tick as the fuel. On day 47, I moved the energy cube for mechanism and hooked it up to my power output, configuring its inputs and outputs. I then thought to start mystical agriculture, so I twerked on the seed to grow it. One thing about this version of mystical agriculture that's different from normal All the Mods 9 is that a seed planted on soil that is the same tier of the seed gave it a chance to produce another seed of the same type. So, hitting farmland with Inferium, then planting a tier 1 seed, or an Inferium using seed, gave it an 11% chance to make another seed when harvested. This was the case for all seeds except for tier 5 and 6 seeds, for balancing reasons. It's understandable. On day 48, I wanted to make a huge plains conjure for where I would have my mystical agriculture set up. I removed a lot of the geode and set up the ritual, adding a whopping 9 source gems before activating the rituals. Throughout the day, I kept having to fill up multiple source jars to get the full island to conjure, finishing on day 49. It took a while. But now it was time to start the mystical agriculture grind, using the limited prosperity shards I had to make prosperity seeds, which was the base of a majority of seeds within mystical agriculture. That and solium seeds, but I was still a ways away from solium. I made the infusion altar and its 8 pedestals, which were used to actually craft the seeds. To harvest the seeds automatically, I made a harvester pylon, which I should have done in my other ATM9 series. Oh well. As I build the platform for mystical agriculture in the background, let me explain how the pylon actually works. It worked only as long as it had water below or it was waterlogged, and had a container above it and a hoe inside the pylon's inventory. It required no power, it just worked, which was incredible, using the hoe to harvest in a 9x9 area around it and depositing the harvested materials into the container above it. So, with that explained, let's get into day 50, where everything starts to ramp up now that mystical agriculture has entered the scene. On day 50, with a good amount of the seeds planted, it was pretty much just a twerk session for the entire day. I'm really getting a good calf workout. I needed to build up a stock of Inferium for the progression of this certain mod, as Insanium, the tier 6 essence, took over 1,000 Inferium to make just one, and some recipes required multiples, with some later requiring whole blocks of it. So yeah, I would need to twerk quite a lot throughout this 100 days. But after twerking all day, I started off day 51 with crafting seeds. The first one I crafted was for dirt. By placing 4 dirt and 4 inferium on the pedestals with prosperity seeds in the center, all I needed was a redstone signal to get the craft started. Planting the seeds in tier 1 or inferium tier farmland gave it a chance to duplicate its seed when harvested. The seeds made essence that could be crafted into certain materials. Some could even be mixed to make different materials, like how fire essence and nether essence could combine to make soul sand. I decided to get a maximum of 6 per seed, not including stuff like diamonds, netherite, and other higher tier goodies, so I got up to 6 dirt seeds. The higher tier materials would get more seeds when I got to them eventually. But to finish off day 51, I upgraded my energy cube into an advanced energy cube, which held 6.4 million FE. On day 52, I made an enrichment chamber from mechanism, which allowed me to enrich certain materials. Essentially, I could put something like diamonds in there to enrich it for the metallurgic infuser, so I could infuse it to make a new alloy. That new alloy went to make an elite energy cube, which held 25.6 million FE. Big battery. It was then time to meet that huge power storage with higher production. I started to work on making blazing crystals from Powa, which required me to put blaze rods into the energizing orb. 9 of them made the block of blazing crystal, which when placed underneath my thermo generators, it put it from making 80 FE per tick to 224 FE per tick. I still wasn't able to put a block of blazing crystal underneath all of them, as my production on blaze rods was not great, and I honestly forgot that blaze seeds existed for the entire 100 days until I voiced this. I then used Eyes of Ender obtained from Seething Endstone to make a new Conjure Island ritual. This one was for the end portal, as I was out of prosperity shards and needed a lot of them. My motivation to clap the dragon's booty cheeks was prosperity shards for magical plants. I actually don't have any other reason to go to the end. Not for the Elytra, not for Draconic Evolution because I can sieve the materials, but for prosperity shards. In this pack, the end is a pretty normal end, but it has a lot of prosperity ore all over the place, which would give me prosperity shards. So the entirety of day 53 was spent preparing to kill the dragon, which meant I spent it all cycling villager trades. Ugh. I did manage to get Protection 3 on all diamond gear as well as mending, except my leggings, those were from a wandering trader. Also obtained Infinity, so I slapped it on a bow. With this mediocre gear finish on day 54, there was only a little bit left to do to prepare, so on day 55, I made an EXP crystal to store my EXP, then hopped into the portal. It was indeed the normal end with a normal dragon fight. Kind of underwhelming, honestly. I did experience my very first death of this run on day 56, as I attempted and failed a water bucket clutch. Believe me, I actually did like 5 other water bucket clutches before. You gotta believe me, I'm the best at water bucket clutches. Yeah, this is why I don't do hardcore. Would have been absolutely terrible to restart from day 1 with all I had done so far. Anyways, I hopped directly back into this fight, and it was a pretty slow one, but I managed to kill the dragon. Woohoo! It dropped a lot of new things, like Draconic Dust from the Draconic Evolution mod, and Dragon Scales from the Mystical Agriculture's add-on mod. The quest for killing it gave me its head, and when I returned home, I placed an extruder on it and allowed it to make Dragon's Breath. I think I needed Dragon's Breath? I have no idea. This version I'm playing currently doesn't have the Draconic Evolution quest lines yet. To continue progressing, I upgraded all my furnaces to gold, which added more smelting slots and increases speed. So when day 57 rose, I made wood seeds, which would grow essences that could be made into all different kinds of wood types. I twerked to get up to 6 seeds, then made the Inferium Infusion Crystal, which would let me take 4 Inferium Essences, the Tier 1 Essence, and combine them to make 1 Prudentium Essence, the Tier 2 Essence. It did have a durability, as all of them do. Only up to 256 Prudentium could be made before the crystal broke. I used some prosperity shards, not the seeds, and some inferium to make inferium gemstones, which then went into inferium growth accelerators. There is one of these accelerators for every tier, however they don't increase in acceleration as they go up in tier, they just increase the range at which they grow the farmland above it. So inferium can be placed up to 12 below the farmland, so you can go 12 stacked on top of each other and then the farmland on top. My goal was to get 11 inferium growth accelerators under each farmland in this area, as I really didn't do the math when building this platform, and only 11 could fit above the top layer of dirt and still have enough room for me to walk around. I went back to the end for some more prosperity shards as I ran out really quickly, finding a yellow heart above the dragon egg. It was for something to do with draconic evolution, but again, no quests yet, so I had no idea. I grabbed the egg using the torch trick, then lost the egg almost immediately when trying to place an extruder on it to get more eggs. I never said I was the smartest person in the world. That was a big goof on my part. The next day, day 58, I made the Prudentium infusion crystal, which allowed me to take 4 Prudentium and make 1 Tertium, the tier 3 essence. I also used the Tertium to make redstone seeds. Finally ending my massive shortage of redstone once and for all. I absolutely twerked my burger buns to stock up on as much redstone as I could. I slept then into day 59 because phantoms suck, and made obsidian seeds, which would make essence for crafting obsidian. I used some of the obsidian to make a nether portal because I assumed that the nether was normal in this mod pack since the end was normal. Was not. I don't know what I was expecting. What I didn't know at the time was that structures still generated, like nether fortresses, and there was one just barely out of render distance that I didn't spot until a long time later. Until then, I made the summoning altar from the All the Mods progression, which was used to summon quite a lot of helpful things. If you were on the tree skyblock, you could use it to make ore bushes, or even make animals. I already had animals though, and ore stuff, so I was fine. I wouldn't use it yet, as I didn't really need to. It just kinda sat there for now. I then made water seeds, which would grow into water essence, one of the 4 elemental essences that would be used for awakening later on. Did I forget to make the other 3? For now, yes, I make one of the other ones in this 100 days. On day 60, I turned back to work on my thermo generators, finally getting the last one of the 12 slots. It did take a bit as I ran out of redstone and blaze powder quite a number of times, so I had to twerk and had to sieve a bunch of things. To upgrade my power even more, I started into the energized tier on day 61, using blocks of iron and blocks of gold in the energizing orb to make energized steel. If you didn't know, you can actually take the blocks of the material and put in an energizing orb to just get 9 of the material. After making the energized steel, for some reason I just didn't go right into upgrading my thermo generators, and instead went back to mystical agriculture. As I said before, I am confused at the decisions that past me makes. At the end of day 61, I slept into day 62, making it there with only 1 death, which was actually pretty good, honestly. I made the Tertium infusion crystal, which let me make Imperium, the tier 4 essence. I went right into making the Imperium infusion crystal to make Supremium. You know the drill. I made a bunch of Supremium and used some of it to make both diamond seeds and netherite seeds. When planting them, since these are tier 5 seeds, they unfortunately did not have a chance to duplicate. Bummer. I then spent all of day 63 not being very productive at all and just kinda twerked all day and night, finishing the day by making the Supremium infusion crystal, which allowed me to take Supremium and make it into Insanium. You know, you get it. In day 64, I made my first Insanium from 4 Supremium, or over 1,000 Inferium. There's a lot of words. I made 4 Insanium so I could make the Master Infusion Crystal, which was an unlimited infusion crystal that could be used on all essences to upgrade them. It had no durability, which was amazing. To automate Insanium creation, I made the tier 3 crafter from RF Tools, which, honestly, that mod has been so good in this pack. Never thought it would be that useful. I didn't even touch it in the other All Mods 9. Since I need power for it, all the way up on top of my mystical agriculture temple, I made the hardened ender gates from Powa, which allowed for essentially wireless power transmission from my ender cell network. It's empty initially, so I made a hardened ender cell and shift right click my old basic ender cell to bring it to 4 million capacity, swapping that cell with a new hardened energy cell. There's a lot of cells in this pack too. I input the recipes for the essences into the crafter, setting the first 5 essences to INT within the crafter and the Insanium to EXTC. No idea what they meant, but that's what the auto crafting guide said. On day 65, I tested it out, slapping as much Inferium as my little inventory could hold. And it worked, it actually made Insanium automatically. It was amazing. My mission then on this day was to set up a way to transfer Inferium from the barrel into the crafter. I completely, absolutely, 100% forgot that item pipes from the pipes mod existed at the time, even though I had used them multiple times previously in this 100 days. No idea why, but for the rest of this 100 days I actually forgot that. Instead, throughout the rest of day 65 and into day 66, I set up a separate ME system just for the barrel and the crafter. I added an importer to the crafter and an exporter to the barrel with an ME chest in the center. I added an acceleration card to both the imp and the exp, and it crafted the Insanium really quickly, so I just took that opportunity to just twerk. I had to make a lot of diamond hoes during this run, but fortunately I had infinite diamonds at this point. To add more output to the Inferium, I changed the farmland to tier 4 on day 67, putting the Inferium output to 250%, and the seed duplication chance to 1%, which is a good thing. Less seeds is okay for Inferium once I had all of it planted. More output per farmland was better, at least until I convert all my output in my temple to just Inferium and start using thermal series to automate seed growth. I added a bunch of growth accelerators underneath, then slept into day 68. I then worked on my thermo generator, steadily upgrading all of them to hardened tier. Just the rest of the day was spent upgrading all my generators slowly. I finally made the last of the harden upgrades in day number nice, which took a surprising amount of time. I probably should have gotten an auto-crafting at this point and auto-crafted them. I had to constantly go back to sieve more crushed netherrack. To end the day, I made nether seeds, which I should have made a bit ago, which could be combined with fire seeds to make soul sand. But I didn't have fire seeds yet either. Day 70. Only 30 days left for this challenge, which was plenty of time. I crafted fire seeds, then twerked so I can get enough to craft a bunch of soul sand. I needed soulium from sieving the soul sand, since there's no nether to find it in. It took an annoyingly long time and an annoyingly long amount of soul sand sieved to pop out soulium. About 15 stacks of soul sand to finally get some. But I immediately made the seeds for soulium, planting them and twerking to get more than 6 seeds since soulium is essential for mystical agriculture. Not as essential as Inferium or prosperity shards, but it's like third place. Soulium was definitely a needed seed. In day 71, I spent a lot of time making more growth accelerators, then crafting both amethyst seeds and stone seeds, which could combine to make calcite, the building block I was using for this temple. I moved the altars upstairs, then spent the entirety of day 72 just working on building. It wasn't a super productive day, but I was building my infrastructure, so that was important. Sometimes you just gotta take a little break from tech just to build. It's really nice and relaxing, and it needs to be done. In day 73, I still had no idea that another fortress was actually just out of render distance from me, but I needed to kill the wither, so I tried to make a simple wither skeleton spawner from memory on just right outside the portal. Have I mentioned my memory isn't good? Since my portal spawned on a basalt delta, these really annoying basalt enemies kept spawning. So I went back to the overworld to upgrade my furnaces to diamond, now that I could afford to. Does it have anything to do with the wither skeleton? No, I just needed diamond furnaces. In day 74, I wanted to move away from the basalt delta into a completely different biome to try and get wither skeletons to spawn, and I finally spotted the nether fortress as I was bridging. The landing was very, very much unsafe to bridge to as it had blazes all over it, since there's very little space to spawn. So in day 75, I made fire res potions, then went to the end, looking for an elytra finally. While exploring, I did spot some cheeky unobtainium ore staking out above the surface, right below a massive obsidian meteor, which was from the Draconic Evolution mod. I keep mentioning that mod, but I never do get to it in this 100 days, as there are no quests at the time of when I was recording this. I will update this mod pack in between this video and the next time I record though, so I can get into its progression, because they added quests. Yay! I continued to explore the end into day 76, finding some very disappointing end cities. My first 3 end cities were just single building, no ship, 2 chests. On my 4th one, I finally found one with a ship. So I went up to raid it and got the elytra. With it acquired, I could go to the fortress mostly safely now. So on day 77, I did just that, fighting my way to establish a beachhead on that fortress, placing blocks to where the wither skeletons would bonk their heads on, and not be able to attack me. I farmed the skelly boys for a few minutes, getting enough skull shards to make several skulls. A nice thing about this pack and the base ATM9, wither skeletons drop skull shards that can be crafted into skulls. The wither needed to die, but there wasn't really a good place to kill it several times. I could do the end portal cheese, but that's lame, as I must suffer without destroying my home. Fortunately, Mystical Agriculture has blocks that are impervious to wither's explosions, so I started to work towards those. I first upgraded my diamond furnaces to emerald furnaces, then obsidian, and then netherite. They now had 6 slots for smelting with factory upgrades and smelted almost instantly. Next up, I continued to work on the wither-proof blocks. I needed to make wither skeleton essence, so I needed the seeds. For mob seeds, this process is a bit different. You needed to fill jars with juice from the mob. To get the juice, you can either have the jar in your inventory and kill the mob with a special sword, or you can use the soul extractor, using drops from the mobs to fill the jars. To actually make the seeds in the first place, you needed soulium seeds, which was just prosperity seeds with soulium. The jars themselves were made out of soulium dust, which was soulstone smelted twice. The problem is that I don't have a nether, so I needed a different method to get soulium dust. Fortunately for me, there was a recipe for that, so on day 78 I used the igneous extruder, the good old thing that I haven't used in like 70 days, to make it. It needed a soulium block underneath with water and lava on each side. Pretty easy recipe. Throughout the day, I used coal to fill the soul jars with wither skeleton juice, as I was lazy and didn't really want to kill them, finishing the seeds as night fell. These ones also unfortunately didn't dupe like diamond and netherite seeds, as they were tier 5 seeds, but not really much of an issue. Anyways, twerk party! The recipes for the witherproof blocks were actually kinda pricey, so it took literally all through days 79 and 80 to finish the wither box, where I would kill the wither. It was a pretty simple design, with just a small box with a tunnel leading to outside and enough light so mobs wouldn't spawn inside. It was a temporary wither killing box, as I would eventually get wither star seeds. On day 81, it was time to finally clap the wither's cheeks. I had a supremium apple from somewhere, I don't really remember, and I ate it, giving me the ability to survive the wither. It actually went down pretty easily, so I summoned a second one. It also went down without much fuss because of the supremium apple. The quest reward for killing the wither gave me a star, so I fought a third wither to get a total of 4 wither stars, enough to make the seed, which I did at the end of the day. The only problem though was that the seeds needed a specific crux underneath them to grow, which I wasn't able to get just yet, as I had A, other priorities, and B, still didn't really have a sustainable way to get wither skulls very fast. I would work on that in the next 100 days, don't worry. The other priority I had though was auto-crafting from Applied Energistics 2, which I really needed to start doing. So in day 82, I made a second 16k disc, as my first 2 were almost full. I then upgraded a lot of my farmland for Inferium to tier 5 farmland, putting the output of them to 300%. So picture like every time you harvest the Inferium, it had an output of 300% higher than it would normally be. I could also do Insanium farmland as well, but my Insanium output was still right now a bit too slow. I would eventually do Insanium, I'll probably do it in the next 100 days. Now we start into autocrafting, so I made the ME pattern provider, which gave certain stations the materials for recipes to autocraft. Imagine it almost as if the autocrafting thing was just handing the materials to the station to craft. I also made the pattern access terminal, which let me see what autocraft patterns I had stored. In day 83, I made the 1k crafting storage, which does something. I think it stores up to 1,000 items when autocrafting, like pulls them from my main ME to that 1k storage. I don't know, man, I didn't read that quest. I kept running out of AE2 materials, so I made the seeds for both Fluix and also seeds for Certus Quartz, which will be immensely helpful in the long run. As I continue with Applied Energistics 2, I will have the materials to continue doing these things. With day 84, I started back on the autocrafting train, making a crafting co-processing unit. I honestly have no idea what this does, but from the quest, it says it just helps make auto-crafting more efficient or something? I couldn't quite understand what I was talking about. I then made the ME pattern encoding terminal, which actually let me take blank patterns and input recipes. To autocraft, you needed to make a pattern for each part of what you wanted to make. For Inferium growth accelerators, for instance, I needed a pattern for Prosperity Gems, which was Prosperity Shards and Diamonds, Inferium Gems, Prosperity Gems and Inferium, and the growth accelerator itself. When you requested the craft, it went through the full process of making as many as you request. It's actually really convenient. Works just like refined storage autocrafting. To finish up the autocrafting setup, I made the molecular assembler, which actually did the crafting itself, as well as a second pattern provider, as the first one was consumed to make one of the other parts of this. My setup was quickly becoming an absolute total mess. I'll spend some time overhauling in the next 100 days, don't worry. I did run out of prosperity shards yet again as I was about to autocraft growth accelerators, so throughout the rest of the day 84 and into day 85 I went to the end to mine for shards. I really need to make prosperity bees. It's one of those things where it's like hindsight 2020. At the end of the day, I autocrafted my first growth accelerators. Yes, that's the first thing I autocrafted, growth accelerators. Priorities, am I right? I needed 11 layers of 80 accelerators per patch of farmland. So 880 per patch of farmland. But I only finished one of the full 11 layers by the end of the 100 days, as it's a lot. With day 86, I really just spent that day working on my mystical agriculture temple. Currently, my output of stone and amethyst to make calcite was too slow, so I actually had to twerk a lot to get them to grow. At the end of the day, I relocated my beacon, building a full max level diamond beacon right on the mystical agriculture temple. The output of diamonds from the seeds was high enough to waste on a beacon. It was kinda nice. I could have done a netherite beacon if I wanted to, but I chose not to because diamond looks pretty. Throughout days 87 and 88 I did the same, working on the temple and refilling up on prosperity shards. I did start planning out the next goal, the netherite smithing template. But first, in day 89, I worked on my power setup again, making more blazing crystal blocks for all my thermogens. For some reason though, 2 of them just weren't making power, probably a bug with them. Even when filled up, the other generators still showed how much they generate, but these ones just show that they were making 0 Fe per tick, even though they had both water as an input, and they had a cable attached to them to move the Fe into the batteries. Weird. No matter. It's time to summon demons with the occultism mod. What a sentence. The way to get a netherite smithing template was to summon a special type of hoglin and kill it. So I started to work on getting into occultism. I did have some demon fruit from earlier, so it was easy to start. I made a dictionary of spirits, which was a guide to the mod, as well as a crafting component to bind any ritual books I made. I then tossed a demon fruit on the ground and lit it on fire with a flint and steel, making spirit fire, which burned infinitely and didn't get put out by rain. I could toss items in the fire to change them to new items, like tossing andesite to make other stone, tossing diamonds made spirit attuned gems, and tossing in oak saplings made oak saplings, but spooky. I made sacrificial bowls, which were needed for all rituals, and then took some drugs to get otherworldly wood. By drugs, I mean I ate some of the special fruit and hallucinated. I tossed the otherworld logs into spirit fire to make ashes, and combined that with burnt otherstone, which was otherstone in a furnace, to make a chalk base. I tossed that chalk base into a spirit fire to make proper chalk for rituals. I did need to make some candles, so I made a butcher knife, killing some llamas to get tallow. I was able to make the candles, and on day 90, made a book of binding for a foliot, the starting ritual. The ritual needed me to place the chalk in a certain location and place ores on the plates. I started the ritual, and it took a bit, about a minute, but I was able to summon a little dude. He's just a boy, look at him. Finally, I felt less alone on my tiny burger island. Ignore the animals and the wandering traders. This little dude could crush ores into dust to double output, but was pretty slow and didn't last forever. I'd work towards the better version of these crushing demons later on, as my eyes were set on the template now that I knew how rituals worked. I made both the yellow and the purple chalk, used to make more complex rituals. For this ritual, I needed 8 total sacrifice bowls. So the main issue right now is that I didn't have the skeleton skulls to complete the ritual, so on day 91, started with me making skeleton seeds. I had a ton of bones, fortunately, from sieving something, so the seeds were actually easy to make. I just slapped them in my soul extractor. The essence could be crafted into skulls, so I made 4 of them for the ritual. I then made the Book of Binding for an Ifrit. This ritual required a pig sacrifice, so I made the Mob Yoinker, which captured mobs by consuming some EXP. On day 92, I started the ritual as the sun rose. Unfortunately, the first possessed Hoglin I summoned didn't drop a template. At the time, and for the next few ritual attempts, I forgot that the mob swab existed. Not my proudest moment. I was honestly going to brute force it all the way through day 92, but when setting it up for the 4th time, I just remembered, oh hey, the mob swab existed, I can make a chicken explode. So, I made a mob swab. With day 93, I cycled villagers for a Silk Touch book, as Apotheosis mod allowed me to pick up spawners with Silk Touch. But, it's a Skyblock, how will I actually get a spawner? There is, fortunately, a single place that I know of that has a spawner. The Nether Fortress. Blaze spawners. I swooped in really quick with my Elytra and nabbed one, stashing it in my pocket. I then started the ritual yet again, but when the Hoglin got summoned, I swabbed it, and then killed it. Still no template. So on day 94, I made a mechanism fluid tank to have my EXP crystal fill it up. I needed a bucket of EXP juice to make the thing to get the spawn egg. Using a fluid pipe, it was able to pipe it in from the tank. So I grabbed a bucket of it and used it and the swab to make a GM chicken feed. I then fed it to a chicken, and the chicken exploded into a spawn egg.
Happy birthday, Taco!
Modded Minecraft is very weird. I built up the next floor of my Benelith and made a bridge to the top of my MA temple. This floor would be entirely dedicated, for now, to this Hoglin spawner. So into day 95, I worked on making the actual killing chamber. There is a mod called Mob Grinding Utils that has a lot of really nice tech to make mob grinders easily. I made a mob masher, which needs a redstone signal to power. It dealt damage to mobs that touched it. I also made an absorption hopper, which acted like a hopper that slurped up items that entered its area, hooked up to a fluid pipe for EXP and an item pipe for the items. I could put the area of absorption up to 7 by 7. On day 96, I finally finished the spawner room, and here's a simple explanation of it. So, there are these fans that just blow the Hoglins into the Mob Masher, and when the Mob Masher kills the Hoglins drop their items, and the absorption hopper picks it up, putting it through the item pipes, and it puts the EXP through the fluid pipe into the respective containers. So, after that's all set up, I placed a spawner, then clicked with the spawn egg to swap it from blazes to possessed Hoglins. And it worked! It spawned Hoglins, then the Hoglins would be ground into netherite scrap. While tinkering with it and turning down the sounds of the Hoglins, my magnet actually picked up the very first netherite template to drop. I went right to duplicating it with diamond and a netherrack, making enough for all that I had. I upgraded to full netherite gear, and, even better, upgraded the mesh in my autosieve to netherite as well, to increase the chance for certain materials to be spawned. So for most of day 97, I tinkered more with the spawner, setting its spawn range to 2, the lowest it should be, never set it to 1 by the way, and set its block activation range to 48 blocks, which was pretty much the entire island that I was living on. So the spawner would always be active, always detecting me within 48 blocks, so it can build up EXP and materials as I worked around the base. I added 10 sharpness modules to the Mob Masher so it can kill the Hoglins faster, and then work towards getting the looting upgrades. I cycled villagers all the way through the rest of day 97 into day 98 to try and get looting. It took way longer than I liked, but eventually I got it, ready to make the looting upgrades. The only thing is that the recipe just didn't work. It's another recipe in this that just didn't work. I hope both these got fixed by the time I actually played the next 100 days. I used JEI to input it into my ME, also input it onto a normal crafting table with and without JEI, and it just didn't work. Looting 3, according to the recipe, 4 blue dye and 4 gold nuggets. It just didn't work. Very confusing and honestly kind of annoying that I wasted so much time, but it wasn't really too bad, as I was still getting infinite spawns of these Hoglins. I then checked in on my Insanium production, and I was at 69 Insanium by this point. Nice, which was plenty for now. I need to up my production quite a lot in the next 100 days, cause currently for the rest of this 100 days, I really didn't have enough time left to start a new project. Instead, I spent the final 2 days of this run, 99 into day 100, finishing the Mystical Agriculture Temple, finishing its floor and the walls. As the footage of me building rolls in the background, let's just reflect on all the accomplishments in this 100 days. My goals at the start were not too complicated except the last one. A storage system? Check. Automate resources? Check. Kill the end dragon and wither? Checkaroni. Get full netherite? Check. The only one I didn't accomplish of my initial goals was getting all the modium, but I underestimated the amount of work it would take to actually get all the modium. For instance, one of the components was the final material for the power mod, and I was only at tier what's blazing crystals, tier 4? Yeah, tier 4 for power. It would take much more time to get all the modium, but I was set up. I have a lot automated and a good power system going, ready to get right into the next 100 days. I am going to wait about a week to record, however, so I can start planning it all out and reading any comments. If you have any suggestions for things that I can do, I would love to see them in the comments. I am not exactly a super techie person. This is my first time really dedicating to All the Mods 9 solo. In my other world, I have friends to help me along the way. But I do have some stuff planned already, but it's right now just simple things like replacing the private ME for Insanium with item pipes, setting up a sieve for each material that can be sieved, and a few more small things. The next 100 days is where I really take my setup to the sky, pun intended. So, if you made it this far, a big thank you for watching. You suffered for what is my recording, over an hour, listening to my voice. So, thank you for watching. This video will be definitely my biggest yet, and it will only go up from here. Make sure to subscribe to keep up with all that I make, right here on Bedrock Burger. Stay tuned. Bedrock Burger, out.